When you are doing data-driven B2B marketing, it is organizational alignment, and this is absolutely critical. Here are some of the tools that we do almost in order. There is a revenue intake where we are looking at the data of where's your most profitable revenue, what are your different revenue streams. That's typically with the CFO or anybody that has P&L ownership. So we're pre-organizing the data to roll up into what your revenue goals are. Next, we want to identify what are the lead sources by buyer persona. So we are pre-deciding on the front end, not on the back end. How are we looking at this and what are some of the assumptions that we have? All of these are really, really important, but it's total revenue strategy and it is a data-driven point of view. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Marketing Blender Show. I am Dacia Coffey, and I have one of my favorite co-hosts on today, Ramsey Sanchez, who I think you still have one of our most watched podcast episodes. So you are in for a treat. The reason that people come back to Ramsey's episode and literally watch over and over and over is because he is data obsessed. He is a lead generation specialist. He's our head of digital marketing. And today's topic is how to create a data-driven business-to-business marketing model. And so, Ramsey, thank you so much for joining in. I'm just so excited to just listen to some stories that you've come across lately and talk a little bit about how your career took on this trajectory where you love like basically digging for treasures inside of data.
Yeah, definitely. And to note back to the video thing, I did put some paid ads behind my video, so there's potentially the reason why. But
because he's data driven,
it's
and he likes to win.
But yeah, I mean, it is a good video if you want to check it out on Google Ads and things like that. But for my career, getting into marketing was like, okay, what parts of marketing do I like?
Yeah.
You know, I like the communication side, I like the video, but I started to see a lot of companies, a lot of business owners really asking questions around Google Ads and tracking and analytics, but they knew nothing of it. And I also didn't want to come into those conversations not knowing anything about it. Yeah. So I started to, take the courses and learn about that, but you don't really get in college, right? So it's you have to go in and do it yourself. And now the data side of things, there are data analysts, are very special beings out there. Like they learn all about the data, but on the marketing side, you learn more about the 4 Ps and things like that, products,
exactly.
Sales, and so you're still kind of having to be left with learning about tracking and CRMs and email marketing and analytics and things. So I would say that YouTube helped a lot in that case, but taking courses and also having some resources for my last companies where they had trainings and they had other marketing directors or experts in that area that really helped me guide me in that, right? So
yeah. I think one of the things that we run across, even before our clients become clients, is some people think they need to be data ready. Meaning I've had people say, well, our data is so messy, or we don't have answers to some of the questions that you're going to ask. Yeah. And we're like, nope, no, it's okay. We actually help solve that problem because, if you haven't figured out how to untangle spaghetti out of your data and pay attention to what to track, you'll track everything and you will never have a data narrative. So for you, if we're talking bare bones, what are some of the first data sources or places of data that you're going to start looking into to kind of check out a client and figure out how things are going?
Yeah. And this will be a bit of a continuum of, how I got into this whole data-driven thing from a marketing standpoint. So as I learned that, I got into a company where the marketing director, I think he was working on his master's for data, and he was essentially the most obsessed with data in the room.
That's a great boss to have.
Yeah, a great boss. And new Google Ads, like it was great to have somebody in that position to also know everything like about the stuff that I was learning or working in. And he definitely led a lot on the tracking side, right? What are all the efforts that are happening, all the organic efforts, all the direct efforts, we need to be tracking that. We need to have eyes on that and protect that in a sense to make sure we're leveraging it right, leveraging those leads, leveraging our system, and ultimately it's I guess proving your worth. I mean, you're showing your value as a marketing department, and so that and you're driving the mission of the company that you're working with, right?
Yeah.
So, the CEO there was really awesome as well. I think before I even got hired there, he knew and understood like marketing is important. I just don't know it. I know sales, I know running a business and growing it to this point, but I've been hearing a lot about this data stuff. And then,
Yes.
They hire a marketing director who's driven in that. And then I somehow matched with, with that company. We talked and we aligned and, was off to the races for that. And I think with that experience, I really got to hone in on my own particular skills. So, I knew that Google Ads and I knew tracking and things like that were important, but like, what does that mean? Like, how do we do it? And
Yeah.
so as my career was I was progressing in that position, I started to look at different tools that they already had set up, right? That, they had their WordPress site, they had GA4, they had HubSpot, they had another CRM in the works, and they had email software, right? So you have all these different tools, and like you're thinking, how do we connect these? How do you integrate them? And sometimes when you're an outsider, you're looking at it, you're thinking, oh yeah, I didn't realize that those actually connect. Or someone else has thought about making a direct link to that other app, or that Google Ads account can be linked to that CRM, or your GA4 can be linked to your ads account. Like, I know they're both Google, I just didn't realize you can make that connection.
Yeah.
And a CEO for sure doesn't know that. They're thinking
It's
about
not their job.
Yeah, it's not their job. They're thinking about something else. And so our job is, okay, how do we track, what is that lead form or what is that phone call, and how are we going to A/B test it? How are we going to split it up and things like that? And so all those different tools I mentioned, you might want to find out if your CRM has those kind of connection points. Like it's called an integration, really. And if it doesn't, I mean, you may want to consider transferring to something that does.
Yep. Or
make your life
Zapier, but
easier.
it's going to be more expensive. So,
Yeah. Zapier is like they always call it like the duct tape of like automation.
Yes.
So, if you can have something that has a native integration with your ads account or with GA4 or something, typically that will go a lot further for you.
Well, and I think one of the things that you're really pointing to is start with the knowns. Okay, like, is GA4 set up? What tools, what tech stack do you already have in place? Mm-hmm. Even if they're not connected, what are we seeing? Okay, you're getting phone calls. Is there any tracking on that? And so really just understanding the landscape of the most important sales touch points and marketing, conversion points. So the intakes, like where the leads are coming from, and simply going, are all these trackable? Great. Or if not, let's fix that. And then starting to layer in the basics of, well, which ones where are we missing some gaps? What can be connected? And so I see so frequently clients get so overwhelmed that they have a tech stack with 4, 5, or 6 tools, which is common, and they just feel overwhelmed. And, having somebody to go, okay, calm it down, look at the basics. And then what I like about what you do is you just get really curious about things. And so it's not like there's a guaranteed checklist every time, but you start just going, okay, like we can track that form. Where did they come from? Or even do we need to know where it comes from? And it just takes an interesting, turn. So what are some examples of places where you've dug deeper than, than like maybe like what's standard, or, what are the most basic tracking mechanisms?
Yeah, I think the one that always gets brought up is, okay, so we have an ad set up, from a client standpoint, they're asking us this question, right? Oh, you have an ad set up. We see that they're coming to our website. What are they doing? Like, what's going on? And we know that if they aren't filling out a form and if they're not making a phone call, are they going somewhere else? And so that's what your tools are for, right? So you have CRMs and scripts that will say, here's the first page that they saw. Here's a referral source. Here's the next page that they saw. Your GA4 can do that. And we do that with some clients that have a conversion point that's not your typical form or phone call. They want them to see a specific page or use a specific tool, some kind of filter form or a locator. And we can say, yes, they came from the site. Here's the analytics. So you can see that they went to this page, then they went to your locator, then after the locator, they went there. And like that kind of stuff really paints the picture for them. And we can start making decisions off of those things. Now, I'm getting better at the strategy around making decisions around data. But before I came to the Blender, I would always find these things. Like I'll find oh, look, you can do the behavior report, or, hey, look, there's this new integration to the director. I was talking to the director. Like, you can create this integration to Google Ads, and like, you can make this audience, and we should be doing something about this. And, as a director, even now with the CMOs, they're like, okay, it's good information. Like, let's sit back and let's talk about like what it is that we need to be doing exactly.
Yeah.
Rather than just trying to put things out there. And I think that is a lot of mistakes that maybe some entry level or even just marketers for certain companies, where they see something that's really nice and shiny, and they want to start doing that for the company, and it really actually starts breaking things.
Yeah.
And they don't know what they're doing with it yet.
Yes.
And so that, that's also important from the data side is, what kind of strategy you got in place for that thing that you found or discovered.
It's such a great point, because there's a very big difference, with like what you were outlining just a moment ago, which is, okay, watching the buyer's journey, and watching their pathway to progress versus, I have this cool thing, let's implement it. and it's not in alignment with, okay, how do we influence progress for the buyer, or what is a gap that we can't see, like a blind spot, like, okay, we can see this, and then we don't know what they're doing right here, or they're not converting like we thought they would, or we're not getting as many leads as we thought. Then adding heat mapping or behavior reports or tracking or AI tools or scraping, where we're like, okay, what's happening here? Like, who are they and what's happening? That's healthy, because we know why we're asking those questions or why we're deploying tools, versus, this is so cool, let's just put it out there. And because I'm all for testing, but there needs to be, a point to it. And I think that's what I like, though, is it's like your curiosity about tools and data, and we can see all this stuff, as you progressed, like overlapped with, okay, but I've got to drive leads. Yes. So I need to be really practical about what do I have to do versus what would be fun to do. But I think both perspectives are really healthy, as long as it's guided by in what's going to drive the activities or marketing metrics that eventually result in revenue and, and ROI, which is really what you're known for.
Yeah. For sure.
So what are some of the most recent things that you've been seeing, whether it's new tools or questions that clients are asking, or developments, around data? Like, what are you seeing, or what are you sensing out there?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for sure, the one that comes top of mind is the AI aspect to things. The marketing CRMs that are out there, the Salesforces, the HubSpot really are trying to implement that as much as possible.
Yeah.
But the more practical things, the things that I discovered a while ago that are probably coming to be more public knowledge, I guess, of how to track, your leads and your conversions, has been around, automations and like segmentations and things like that for that system. So like, for example, with a Google Ads account, and depending on the budget, it gets a little bit more complex, but you have one ad account that's set up, and you have, let's say, 4 different ad groups with different match types or different keyword groupings, and you and the client want to know, or the CEO want to know which of these keywords is going to be more effective, right? And so you can go based off of clicks and impressions, but that only gets you so far, right? Well, just because this one gets 10 clicks and this one gets 20 clicks doesn't mean the 20 clicks is much more successful, right? I mean, it could be that the 10 clicks are more intentional, or they're the ones that are converting. So that's the importance of the tracking in the CRM, is that you get that integration with Google. Then you can see that the lead came from that specific campaign, from that specific ad group with that keyword, and then you create your list based off that. So if you've got a pretty good budget and you're creating quite a few leads, and I've done this with several clients where it's like, okay, we established that these are the keywords we track, and we're going to run a test, because that's usually what it is. When we're onboarding them, it's a test. We're going to learn as much data. We get leads and we get form fills, and it's typically going to be for your low conversion point, like top of funnel lead forms, phone calls, right? We want to get the data, and we can see in the CRM, I'll have a filter set up where it's, okay, anyone who comes from a click campaign saw this page, or came from this keyword, show us that, and we'll start segmenting that. And that right there is a really great thing to show a client, or show the CEO, because they look at that and they go, yeah, those are the terms that we like. And it's very interesting that it's that term, right? That's pretty common across all of them. They're like, it's just so interesting that that's happening right there because of this, or because of that. Or then it gets them start thinking about questions, or like, I wonder if maybe the reason why they're searching that is this, because this is what I've seen, or what I've found. And then I'm like, oh, that's great information. So let's reevaluate. Let's reevaluate the messaging, the copy, the landing page, and just something like that. I mean, it's super simple, practical from a marketing data standpoint, but then when you get more complex, right, you got tons more leads coming through. That's when you might want to start thinking about getting like a data scientist, right? Building your dashboards, and segmentation.
Yeah, absolutely. But even when it gets sophisticated, the core philosophy that you're describing around circling data back to sales or leadership or both, and then letting human conversation and human curiosity about what's actually happening, and then validating, did the lead close? Like, it's, marketing's job should not end at how many leads do we drive. It should be, how many leads, and then which leads turned into closed deals and sales, and are they the ones we wanted? So taking it all the way through, that alignment is huge, but then always circulating it back to that human thinking component, because there's so many opportunities that develop that may not have been on that initial keyword intake form, or those initial assumptions, but then they develop because of those conversations in the data that then ask the next best question, that then led to another campaign, another test, and like you said, and it just continues to sophisticate the marketing to get more and more leads. But you need the same principles even when the volume is there, because then the analyst brings those same questions, just at higher volume. So I love that. Absolutely. At the Marketing Blender, we have fractional CMOs and outsourced marketing teams to drive your success. The two most common problems that we are approached about is, how do we break revenue plateaus and accelerate success? Or how do we attribute marketing to revenue impact? And the answer is that we build a system, because your marketing should be driving revenue, it should be driving your reputation, and it should be driving resilience. If you want to learn more, check out themarketingblender.com. Okay, so one final question I've got for you, and then on top of that, I want to share one of the conversations you and I had the other day, because I think it'll be so beneficial to the audience, kind of pulling back the curtain. So one of the final questions that I have for you is, all right, paid lead gen gets a ton of attention, like if it's Google AdWords or paid social or whatever. What role does it play? There's a hyper focus on just Google AdWords. Is that healthy?
Oh, Yeah, I mean, typically I would think depending on I mean, there's so many variables that goes into that, but for sure from a from a marketing standpoint, especially since we work in like a holistic view of marketing, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at strategy, we're looking at different aspects of marketing. Google Ads should not be the end all to be all for your lead gen and to solve things for your business. I've heard it put where, if you need ad set up, don't do it yourself. But if you need to make sales revenue, don't rely on the person who sets up your ads
Right.
either. It's like they're going to do it properly, but you need someone in that position to then also help you with driving sales and conversions and things. So I think that's another common pitfall, I guess, could be for someone who would come to a ads person to say, hey, what do I need to be doing from a marketing, or like, how do we get more sales? Because there have been cases with the Google Ads where we set up the account, and just going back to what I was saying before, where I can get the keywords like super refined to the point where the terms that they show up for are congruent to the keywords. If you understand Google Ads, you got other keywords that your ads show up for. They can be so aligned, and you're getting clicks, but they may not be converting, or they may not get, there could be just other factors or climates or things that are happening. So that decision around the landing pages or the decision around the messaging probably most likely must come from a CMO, your marketing director, whoever it may be, to be that strategist, right? And that's something I like to do is like I co-op with the CMO, and they have these ideas of, okay, well, I'm thinking about doing this retargeting, right? It's not always search. I want to do this retargeting. I want to do this YouTube, or I want to hit them on social. And they come to the digital ads person, and then they say, can this be done?
Yeah.
And then I say, this is what you can do with that.
Yeah.
Right. And then they take that information and they say, okay, cool, I can create a plan, and it's going to convey this, and we're going to get with, like, it's like you said, validation, it's valid now. It can be done. We're going to test it and go to market with that. But that's just one aspect, right? That's just Google Ads, right? And
Yeah.
you got your social, your organic messaging, you got LinkedIn, you have trade shows. I've had clients where I show them leads from ads, but I also say, look, your direct ads are kind of, or your direct leads are kind of going up too.
Yes.
Or your organic might be going up. Have you been seeing anything happening differently, or have you been doing something as well? Sometimes you can attribute like a direct lead from ads,
For sure.
because they take your link and then they go to a new tab, or they
go back and Google you.
Yeah,
and
they go back to
your
Google
name.
you.
Yeah.
But there might be something that you're doing, like a trade show, or going around and connecting, networking with different businesses, and then now they're searching for you that way, from your flyer, from your name, and you're going to see those leads come into your CRM. Hey, there's more direct. There's an uptick during that weekend that I had that trade show.
Yes.
And so that kind of information is really helpful. And again, like, it shouldn't all just be reliant on that. It should be, again, a part of a whole holistic view of the marketing.
Yeah. And one of the big things here that Ramsey's really outlining is when you are doing data-driven B2B marketing, it is organizational alignment. And this is absolutely critical. So for a fractional CMO, when I'm thinking about data and I'm working with a data professional like Ramsey or a data analyst, here are some of the tools that we do almost in order. There is a revenue intake where we are looking at the data of where's your most profitable revenue, what are your different revenue streams. That's typically with the CFO or anybody that has P&L ownership. So we're pre-organizing the data to roll up into what your revenue goals are. Next, fast forward, we've identified your buyer personas and written a marketing plan. Next, we want to identify what are the lead sources by buyer persona. Because again, Ramsey and I were talking about tracking buyers' journeys and using healthy curiosity that aligns with the right attention to data, the correct data. So we are pre-deciding on the front end, not on the back end. How are we looking at this, and what are some of the assumptions that we have? Now, in our firm at the Marketing Blender, we have something called an impact statement. And so it simplifies these assumptions and it says, okay, what estimate are we attributing to booked business? How much is net new? Okay, and the net new, what are our lead sources? Lead sources, yes, include Google AdWords, but they include word of mouth, they include referrals, they include trade shows, exactly the data points that Ramsey was suggesting organizationally. Those are our leading indicators. Everything else in the marketing plan needs to funnel to those core lead sources. And you set targets for each one of them and you set benchmarks for each one of them. So when Ramsey's saying that sometimes there's an exaggerated focus on Google Ads, he's right. And he used the word holistic, which I love, because Google Ads is going to represent a certain percentage of your leads. And what else? And each lead source should be seen in its relationship to your overall goal strategy, and Google AdWords should have appropriate focus on that. So yes, we want that money producing high ROAS or return on ad spend, but guys, that's only one tiny data point. It's not the only data point. So if you guys are overly fixated on ROAS, be careful because you might be missing the forest for the trees. So impact summary, and then guess what? Your scorecard aligns with that. So we want to track data from revenue to sales pipeline to lead qualification, nurture, and reach. But we want those core lead sources highlighted as your core leading indicators in order to track all of the data tails, because there are certain things that you will deploy that are not going to be effective for, God forbid, 12 to 18 months. And that's appropriate. We need to be planting seeds for how are you going to hit your 2026 goals. And then there are other things, like the things that Ramsey has control over, that you're going to see revenue attribution anywhere between 1 to 6 months. So that's how are we going to hit our number this quarter and next quarter. All of these are really, really important, but it's total revenue strategy and it is a data-driven point of view. And one of the other things that Ramsey's hinting at around alignment is this is culturally healthy. So one of the things that I love about your conversations with clients is, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You have to walk into some hostile environments. People get really scared about the ebb and flow of lead generation. They get really confused, which typically is not a good look for C-suite executives, right? Yeah. And so then they try to come in and like adjust and control and point, and what ends up happening once they work with you for a while is that alignment around the data-driven marketer, asking the right questions and looping sales in and looping leadership in and looping the fractional CMO in, ends up building a culture of growth. Yeah. Versus a culture of, well, sales didn't close that deal. Well, I don't know if those are qualified marketing leads. Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Versus, hey guys, we're all playing for the same team. Like, let's just go freaking win together. But a lot of times we see data become a weapon. And what I love about your approach is you're using data to add to a cultural perspective of growth. And it's just really exciting to see people on lead generation calls, like digging through the numbers and smiling and laughing with you. And I'm like, that's what it looks like. Yeah. I love that. So
it is
totally.
I mean, it just reminds me of something I learned in my previous, like my first role into marketing. It was mainly around professional development. It was Dale Carnegie training.
Yes.
But the thing that the trainer and the president of that location said was, he was telling a story about his daughter remembering a bunch of names, which is pretty known for the Dale Carnegie location. But what he said was that someone pointed that out. That person remembered, your daughter remembers so many names. It was like 25 names or something. It was crazy. She has a great memory. And he kind of joked, I think he joked like, that's not really it. She had the right tools and process in place. And I just, ever since then, I was just thinking like, that is so profound, like having the right tools and processes in place. And a lot of times, like the reason why the Blender does so well, I think, is that we don't just take a client on and say, oh yeah, we're going to do ads for you and that's the specific service. It's no, you're going through the whole tools and process first. You're not going to go off of memory when you're trying to track and look at things. We have scorecards, We have tracking in place. This is where your keywords are going to go, where your social and your organic keywords are going to be tracked. And like all those things is just a continuum, right? You're going to continue to use that even if you don't use the blender anymore. That is all yours.
Yes.
And I think that's the most important thing, is just make sure to continue to use those tools and processes.
Oh, mic drop. Like I'm so excited. And it's funny. I wrote down something that I'm so glad you brought that up about memory.
Yeah.
People's memory is wrong, like recency bias. And what I love is when people go through and have the patience, and patience sometimes is only a couple months, like each month we uncover a new place where we can fix a data blind spot or something like that. But when they go through the process, it is amazing how often people are surprised how much direct traffic, or that direct traffic is going up, or that they get more word of mouth, or that they get more referrals than they thought, or there is trade show attribution. It just might not show up for 12 months. And all the aha moments that if you just ask them, where do you think your leads are coming from? I have never, ever had a client get this right. Never. And, they're the ones closing the deals, but it's whatever they experienced recently. And that's why being data-driven is so important, because you can't optimize what you're not tracking and what you don't know. So you guys, thank you so much. I hope this was beneficial to you. There are so many additional things that we can unpack, and we do have previous episodes around lead generation, specifically around Google AdWords and some others. So feel free to go grab those resources. But more importantly, come get what you want. Like if you have a specific question, email us. Drop that in the comment. Like, come get the answers that you need, because we have a real passion for this, and data does not trump humanity. It brings it out. And that's what we want for you, is that when you get this data story right, it gets everybody on the same page, and it calms down blame and shame, and it increases creativity and engagement and excitement. And you start seeing people's natural giftings show up around a unified goal, because data is just data, and it just creates a pathway for how do we get more squeeze out of our lemon and more ROI out of your marketing. So thank you so much for jumping into one of our favorite conversations with one of my favorite people. We'll see you next week. Hit that subscribe button, doggone it. Onward and upward.